I want to return to the question of the Ministry for National Dialogue. All of us are concerned about extremism. And I know that when I say the word extremism, we tend to think of a particular religion. That is unfortunate because extremism is found in every nook and cranny, in every religion, in every ideology. So if when I mention the word extremism, a particular religion comes to mind, please understand that you have to do some work on yourself and you have to think about this question of extremism, and you have to realize that extremism has nothing to do with any one particular religion or any one particular ideology, and that it is a phenomena that can be found all over the human species. Now, how do we respond to extremism? And how is it that extremism has become something that terrifies us, that we are so concerned about, that we are so helpless in the face of? Extremism has become a problem because the moderates are not talking to each other. And in that sense, the moderates have become isolated. And these extremists are the outcome of the isolation that has been caused by the moderates. Now, this can be seen very clearly in our country. Yes, in Sri Lanka. There was a time about 50 years ago when the moderates were in constant conversation with each other. They were in and out of each other's houses. They participated in each other's ceremonies, festivals, in their social functions and occasions, funerals, weddings, birthday parties. They spoke to each other all the time, and they spoke in English. They may have spoken in Sinhalese at home and Tamil at home, but when they got together, they spoke in English. This was a time when there was a national dialogue, when there was conversation. And as long as there was conversation, it was very difficult for extremists and extremism to emerge. There is serious work that has to be done in order to respond to extremism. And the foundation of that work is dialogue. Let me tell you very clearly that we have to speak, we have to talk, we have to discuss amongst ourselves as moderates, yes, but the more skilled amongst us have to talk to extremists as well. We have to understand the fears of the extremists. We have to understand what the concerns of the extremists are. We have to understand the roots of their extremism. And we have to help them to overcome these concerns, these fears. We have to address these concerns, we have to address these fears, and we have to create the structures that will make them feel comfortable and be able to move beyond these fears and join us, the moderates, in our interaction. But for this to happen, we should interact first of all. If the moderates ourselves cannot dialogue, how can we expect the extremists to have any kind of a dialogue with anyone? If we as moderates cannot reach out to each other and talk to each other, we are only going to make the isolation of the extremists worse. So let me make this very clear. This Ministry for National Dialogue is a very, very important ministry. And I am glad that the government has set up such a ministry, and I am even more happy that they have selected an appropriate person to be the minister for national dialogue. Now, my greatest concern is that you and I will not respond as enthusiastically and with the kind of determination and with the kind of persistence that is required to make anything succeed. If we are going to sit back and say, what a funny ministry this is, this Ministry for National Dialogue, what are they going to do? What can you do by talking? Then we are going to dig our own graves. We are going to destroy our own future. We have to think. We have to speak to the person who instituted that ministry, probably the Prime Minister, or maybe the President. I am not aware whose idea this was. We have to understand, we have to learn from them and understand why that ministry was put in place. And it is not enough to learn from them and understand why they put it in place. We have got to tell them what we see we can do with that ministry. We have got to tell them, now that you have put this ministry in place, we understand that this ministry can be used in order to achieve X, Y, and Z. Please see that your minister does what has to be done. So once again, it comes back to you, and it comes back to me, and it comes back to all of us. We can decide whether we are going to remain apathetic, sit back, critical, pessimistic, or we can get involved, engage the structures that have been created for us, use them, force them to realize their maximum potential, and reap the benefits for ourselves and for the future. Extremism exists because the moderates do not talk to each other. You were afraid, I understand. I was also afraid. Not too long ago, if one opened one's mouth and spoke up, one was likely to be disappeared in one of those white vans, tortured and killed. It is the duty of the government to track down the people who were responsible for this reign of terror and punish them severely and ensure that they cannot do this sort of thing again ever. And it is up to you and it is up to me again to insist that the government does this. What was done is not something that can be forgotten or forgiven. People were killed. It is something that cannot be forgiven. And the reign of terror cannot be forgiven. These are serious crimes, not just against people. These are crimes against the whole of humanity, against our national state, against our constitution. Those who engaged in these crimes, and they did so in a systematic way, they must be hunted down. Their guilt must be established, proved, exposed to the whole world. And yes, they must be punished. And they must be prevented from ever getting access to the power that will enable them to repeat that very same behavior again. And this Ministry for National Dialogue is one of the mechanisms that will help us to do this. It will provide us with the space where we can come forward and speak and say and speak what has to be spoken. The truth. The truth may be ugly sometimes. We may not like it. It may hurt our pride because we like to think that our nation is a nation of saints, that there are no sinners here, and that our state has never committed any kind of wrongdoing, any kind of crimes. That is not true. It is something we must aspire to. We must have a state like that, a good state. A state that is not corrupt, and a state that is not murderous, and a state that does not commit crimes. But the only way to do that is to punish those who use the state to commit crimes, for whatever reason it may be. Yes, we shall have a state that is not a criminal state. And yes, we shall have a state that does not commit crimes against humanity. And yes, we shall have a state that all of us can be proud of. But the only way that we can have a state like that is by exposing and punishing those who use the state to commit crimes and to institute a rule of terror for so long. We cannot run away from this problem of war crimes. Every state has to honor its war heroes. And we have many of them. They deserve our respect and our gratitude and our honor. But their names are being dragged in the mud by war criminals. And these war criminals must be exposed, they must be tried, and they must be punished, and they must be prevented from committing any such crimes ever again. That is the way you and I can build a state that we can be proud of, that we can be confident in, and that we will not need to be afraid of. We lived in fear. We lived in fear. And now that a group of leaders have come forward to change that and create a situation where we will not need to live in fear, where we can be free, where we can speak. Let us speak and let us help those leaders to establish those freedoms forever, so that the future will be a future of freedom and creativity and the realization of the potential of this island.